First of all, I'm really glad that I can be here, and it's been great hearing our panelists so far, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of them. I've been trying to figure out for the last week or so, how can I use 8 minutes to give you something to take home with? You've already been hearing some really good suggestions, and I wish that I could give you all the suggestions that there are, because there are things you can do. This absolutely, as was mentioned, is a skill set that you can develop. What I want to do is give you a little bit more insight into how tests are different than the rest of the knowledge that you may have. Remember that when you take a standardized test, it's a very specific and limited purpose that test is for. It's not testing it's used for a very specific purpose. It's a hoop that you're jumping through to get into a profession. All standardized tests have that, and all standardized tests have certain characteristics in common. Some are more content-focused than others. Some have very little content. This one's sort of in the middle compared to certain other tests that are out there. But all of them are standardized, they're rigidly defined, and they're very predictable. Quick question, and we can do this by show of hands. In social work school, how many multiple choice tests did you take? 1? Raise your hands if 1. Raise your hands if it was 2. 3? 4? Did anybody take 5 or more in your 2 years in school? I see like 3 hands. Okay, how many papers did you write? Did you write 1? Did you write 5? Raise your hands. I want to see hands. 20. Oh, that's what I want to see. So the way social work does its assessment and evaluation of whether you know what's going on is using complex, non-time limited structures. Group projects, maybe a fishbowl, right? A paper where you have to put a lot of work into it so you can show that you understand and embrace the complexity of the situation. Standardized tests are reductionist, and they're focused on very specific words and very specific language. So let's flip to the next slide, please. Okay, now, everybody, please don't shout out your numbers and don't shout out anything. And if you've done this and been in the room with me doing this before, please don't give this away. Everybody think of a number between 1 and 5. Okay, how many? Raise your hand if you say 1. I see about 8 hands. Say 2. Raise your hand. A lot more, maybe 30. How many of you say 3? Oh my God, it's like 50% of the group almost. How many of you say 4? The other 40%. And how many of you say 5? Okay, it's really cool. If you do this in any population in the United States, you'll find that 80% of the people say 3 or 4. Because in America, in this culture, regardless of background, and we've got a lot of diversity in this room, people like to be in the middle or a little bit above the middle. People don't like the edges in this society, in this culture. I don't exactly know why, but it is a phenomenon that's absolutely true. But it doesn't mean that all the answers are B and C and none of them are A and D. I'm not saying that. But what it means is that the way we think is predictable. Okay, now let's do another one. So just look. So that's a very easy way. Incidentally, flip to the next slide. Why didn't anybody say 4.72? I used the word number. I didn't use the word integer. My question, the words in the question that I used matter. And the words that are used in the questions that they're going to ask you on this test matter just as much. And so if you don't read them carefully and understand what those specific words mean, you will answer the question wrong. You'll go down the garden path. Okay, let's do another one. Flip to the next slide, please. Okay, by show of hands, how many of you know what city is the capital of Togo? Raise your hand. I see 1, 2. I see 2 out of 200, 3 out of 200. Okay, now flip to the next one. Which city is the capital of Togo? Now raise your hand if you think you know which one is the capital of Togo. I see about 5 more hands. Now flip to the next one. Which city is the capital of Togo? Raise your hand if you know. Knowledge and how you use knowledge is fungible. How the test is written, how the questions are written, what the credited response is, and what the distractor answers are, matters to how you do and how you think. So you have to pay close attention to every word. Now, I've spent 5 minutes going through a brief exercise to show you the significance of language and test structure in how our brains work. They put millions of dollars into creating tests in a very sophisticated process that they say is unbiased. I'm not going to talk to that issue. I have opinions. I'm not sharing them right now. Okay, so let's just go on for 2 more minutes because I know move on. This is what they say it tests. You can find this on the ASWB website. There are content areas, there are knowledge skills. There are these domains that you can look at, these KSAs that tell you everything you need to study. But that's not all it tests. As you've heard, it also tests, next slide please, the convergence of your experience with dominant culture. It's a little easier if you grew up with the English language. Certainly if you grew up in American culture. I had a student who was from Japan, and she failed by a few points. We did 3 hours of tutoring. What we determined through diagnosis of what was going on in her head was whenever there were questions having to do with conflict, whether it was a client social worker supervisor, she was a little off. She wasn't getting it. She misread for the generic white bread version of the test. Where she worked, she had a great head, and it was perfect for what she did, but it didn't work for the test. She tweaked that, she passed. So it also does, as we've heard, test if you're struggling with reading comprehension, reading and understanding what's on the page, it's going to be a struggle. And also, you got to understand what information that you do have in your head is relevant. That's integrative reasoning. Let's flip to the next one, please. Now, this is, I think, the most important thing to put this test in perspective. There's all this information that it tests, but what are the, you guys can shout out now, I've been keeping you quiet, but now you can talk. What are the 3 most important things about being a social worker? What are the 3 most important characteristics or qualities you need to have? I heard empathy. What else? Listening skills. Okay, how do you test those on a standardized test? I don't know. I don't think they know. But my point is that some of the most important things about being a social worker can't be tested on this test. So lighten up on yourselves. Take it easy. This is a game. It's a game you need to learn how to play that has rules you can learn. But it doesn't say anything about you as a social worker, and it certainly doesn't say anything about you as a human being, which may be deep down in the core what you may be struggling with. So keep going. This is my little contribution to your thoughts about how to deal with anxiety. Remember that not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. That was Einstein said that, who failed math when he was a kid, and look what he did. So just because you failed once doesn't mean you aren't going to be able to make great contributions. There's a little bit, one last thing. I do have brochures for the social work licensure prep courses that Jewish Board provides on the piano over there and on the table over there. There are a lot of great test prep choices. And here's what's important, and this is something everybody in this room knows. You need to do assessment, diagnosis, and planning for yourself. That's a model we all learn, right? Assessment, diagnosis, treatment, planning. Apply it to yourself. You need to match your prep with your needs, and you need to be realistic. If you need some very smart, wise, experienced person that's in this room or somewhere else to help you see what you need, ask for the help. Because as I said earlier, you don't have to do this alone. I'm really grateful that I got to